Wait a minute. Have you heard the strange and unusual stories of the Forgotten News podcast?
Hello, everyone. This is Jim.
This is Kit Karen.
We host the Forgotten News podcast.
On our show, we tell true stories from history, but not the stories you learned in school.
We tell stories that are obscure,
mysterious,
weird,
wild.
For example,
the teenage girl who committed the last stagecoach robbery in the United States in 1899.
The really dumb gang of crooks who unintentionally kidnapped the lieutenant governor of Idaho in 1929.
The group of old ladies in 1893 who would secretly go out at midnight to catch stray cats and then, speed up their journey to heaven.
The farmer who vanished into thin air in front of witnesses as he simply walked across his empty dirt yard in 1889.
So, on any given episode, our stories might be serious, silly, or sad.
But they will always be a true story.
So now you know pretty much everything about what to expect on the Forgotten News podcast.
We think you'll like it.
Thank you for listening.
Bye.
On the afternoon of Sunday, September 10th, 1995, 29-year-old Lisa Manderach took her 19-month-old daughter shopping at a children's store in Collegeville, Pennsylvania. Neither one of them would make it out of the store alive. From the South Shore of Lake Erie, this is Great Lakes True Crime. Before we get into this episode, I wanted to advise you that this story does involve a sexual assault of a woman and the murder of a child. I don't go into very many details, but it is there. Lisa Manderach loved her weekends. She and her husband Jimmy both worked full-time Monday through Friday, so Saturdays and Sundays were a time to relax and hang out with each other and their daughter, Devon. Lisa drove a forklift for a food distribution company in nearby King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, and the couple also owned and managed a weekend janitorial service. On top of that, Lisa was a volunteer for Meals on Wheels. She was said to always be upbeat and a hard worker. The family lived in the small town of Limerick, Pennsylvania, which is an unincorporated township about 34 miles, or 55 kilometers, northwest of Philadelphia. Their home was in a development named Heritage Ridge, which was also home to many other young suburban families. Although Limerick was a small town at the time of this story, its population has grown tremendously in recent years, from about 6,000 residents in 1990 to 19,000 today. On that Sunday afternoon in September 1995, Lisa decided to take Devon for what was planned to be a brief shopping trip, while her husband Jimmy stayed home to watch the Philadelphia Eagles football game on television. The trip was planned to be so brief, in fact, that Lisa left Devon's diaper bag at home with Jimmy. When she didn't return home soon, he started to panic. As Sunday afternoon turned into Sunday night, Jimmy called the police to report his wife and daughter missing. Police searched the shopping center where Lisa had been planning to stop. Her empty vehicle was located in the parking lot with no sign of mom or daughter. There was also no sign of a struggle, abduction, or accident. Family and close friends also set out to search for the two, but with no luck. At this point on Sunday night, the only store still open in the shopping center was a supermarket. The store's aisles were searched, and Lisa was paged in the store's intercom system, but there was no sign of her or Devon. Then came the news that everyone dreaded. That afternoon, hikers in nearby Valley Forge National Park came across the body of a baby girl. It was Devon. Her body had been thrown from a nearby road onto the trail. She was fully clothed but had bruises on her body. It was apparent she had been strangled. Unfortunately, investigators did not find any forensic evidence on her body, and when it came time to identify the body, Jimmy couldn't bear to do it. So his brother John, Devon's uncle, identified her instead. Naturally, the police initially looked at Jimmy, as so often the husband or boyfriend is found to be involved in the killing of a wife or girlfriend. Family and friends told investigators that the two had a very loving marriage, and Jimmy would never hurt Lisa or his baby girl. Neighbors confirmed that his car never left the driveway that afternoon, and in not too much time, Jimmy was cleared by police, and the investigation moved on. At this point, police had no idea who killed Devon, or where Lisa was for that matter. The next people who were looked at by investigators were a local motorcycle gang that met near the shopping center, but not much came out of that line of inquiry. The following day, Monday, police focused their attention on two children's stores at the shopping center, Annie Says and Your Kids and Mine, which had opened only a few weeks earlier. No one interviewed at Annie Says remembered seeing the two on Sunday, but a woman did recall seeing Lisa and Devon at Your Kids and Mine around 3:30 on Sunday afternoon. The woman remembered seeing the two enter the store after she was heading out the door, after paying for her merchandise. Police searched the sales records for that time and found that there was a purchase made by Lisa. They spoke with the store's owner, Ruth Fairley, who stated that her 22-year-old son, Caleb, worked alone at the store all day Sunday. So police brought Caleb Fairley into the station for questioning and immediately noticed that he had makeup on his face. They handed him a towel and asked him to remove the makeup. When Fairley removed the makeup, it was clear that he had red scratches on his face. They appeared to be fingernail scratches all across his face. There were about 10 of them in total. Fairley had an explanation for the scratches, though. He claimed that he went to see a band at a club called The Asylum in Philadelphia on the Sunday the night before the incident, and his face was scratched up in a mosh pit at the show. Now, I've been in my share of mosh pits back in the day, and have never been scratched in the face, nor has anyone I know. It's just not something that would happen. On top of this shaky story, though, Fairley had another problem. It seems he told his friends an entirely different story about the scratches. He told them he got the scratches while breaking up a fight near the rubbish dumpsters behind the shopping center. Police looked into Fairley's past and found that nothing alarming or unusual was reported from his high school years as far as criminal activity, but he was said to be quiet, odd, and a bullying victim. According to classmate James Myers, other students didn't pay much attention to him, and if they did, they would pick on him. He was routinely ridiculed by girls for his looks and awkward personality, and was said to be generally friendly, but leering and vulgar to women that he didn't know. After high school, though, he was accused by two young women of sexually harassing and groping them. Police did little follow-up on the complaints, and he was never charged. Fairley's friends also admitted that he was a bit peculiar, spending a lot of time looking at porn magazines and obsessively playing Dungeons and Dragons. Fairley also liked to act out vampire fantasies, and was particularly fond of a t-shirt he owned that depicted a beautiful woman being ravished by a vampire. The woman on the shirt looked quite a bit like Lisa Manderach, having black hair and very fair skin. He lived at his mom's house, but was seemingly in his own world, divorced from reality. He even went so far as to dress up as a vampire when at home. When police spoke with witnesses, One woman said she remembered seeing a man vacuuming the store late on Sunday afternoon, shortly before the store closed. Another witness also saw him vacuuming, but this was early on Monday morning. So that's a lot of vacuuming. Police searched the store's vacuum cleaner and found strands of long, dark hair, which looked as if it could have been from Lisa. Without a body, however, they couldn't compare it to be certain. Investigators looked more closely at the store, shining an ultraviolet light to see if any blood or other fluids could be detected. The light revealed some suspicious stains, which turned out to be Devon's saliva. They also found traces of semen on the carpet, and this was found to be from Fairley. Finding semen on the floor of a children's store is unusual at best, but it didn't necessarily tie Fairley to Lisa's disappearance. Finding Lisa's body was still the key to solving this case. At this point, the police changed tactics. Rather than solely relying on a search for more physical evidence, they decided to confront Fairley with the evidence they did have to see if he would provide any further details or perhaps even a confession. To their utter surprise, even shock maybe, Fairley didn't admit to the murders, but did agree to lead them to Lisa's body under one condition. They had to agree to not seek the death penalty if they ever tried him for murder. Michael Marino, who was district attorney at the time and was the one who had to determine whether the deal should be accepted, was worried that authorities would find Lisa's body too late to get any useful forensic evidence from it, so he agreed to take the death penalty off the table in exchange for the location of Lisa's body. Marino later said that agreeing to that deal was the most difficult decision he ever had to make in that position. Fairley led detectives to a wooded area near an industrial park a few miles from the store. It was there that they encountered Lisa's nearly naked body. Her black lace top was pulled up around her neck, and under her fingernails, they found traces of Fairley's skin. Her blouse was tested for evidence, and those tests revealed that fibers from Fairley's shirt were on her blouse. The hairs found in the store vacuum cleaner were found to indeed be from Lisa, and it was also apparent that she had been sexually assaulted. At this point, police and prosecutors had all the evidence they needed, and Fairley was charged with 2 counts of murder, aggravated assault, theft, and abuse of a corpse. At the trial, prosecutors said they believed that when Lisa and Devon walked into Your Kids in Mine that Sunday afternoon, Fairley found his fantasy woman. The two were the only customers in the store, so Fairley locked the doors and attacked Lisa behind some clothing racks. She fought back fiercely, scratching her attacker's face and breaking some of her own ribs during the struggle. But Fairley eventually overpowered Lisa, sexually assaulted her, and then strangled her to death. He then strangled the little one as well. He tried to clean up the crime scene by shampooing the carpet and vacuuming it twice. He carried the bodies out the back of the store, threw the little one into the National Park property, and took Lisa's body to the industrial park. Fairley was put on trial in July 1996 in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. The case was understandably big news in the quiet small town. It was such big news, in fact, that there were concerns that an unbiased jury could not be selected for the trial, and because of those concerns, a jury was bussed in from nearby Dauphin County, Pennsylvania. Throughout the preliminary hearings and the trial, the atmosphere was intense and fraught with raw emotion. When the verdict was announced, Fairley was found guilty on all charges. He was sentenced by Judge William Carpenter to 2 consecutive life terms without chance of parole, meaning he would in all likelihood die in prison. Judge Carpenter explained the sentence, saying Fairley killed a toddler who was innocent, helpless, and incapable of defending herself, and terrorized a community that used to think that a mother and daughter could shop on a Sunday afternoon in Collegeville without being murdered. Fairley did not testify at the trial, but at the sentencing hearing, he did apologize for his crimes. He asserted that he couldn't make sense of why he did the things he did. In February 1996, Lisa's husband James filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Fairley and his parents. The lawsuit alleges that the parents should not have left him alone in the store since they had been aware of, quote, numerous assaultive contacts with females, unquote, before the murders. It went on to state that despite the fact that the parents knew of the risk he posed for future assaults, they permitted Fairley to operate the children's store alone without any supervision or control. The suit asked for compensation for the loss of his Lisa and her earning potential. James Manderach prevailed in the trial and was awarded $1.6 million to be split between himself and Lisa's mother. But the story doesn't end there. In September 2012, Fairley filed an appeal of his double life sentence based on a U.S. Supreme Court ruling that offenders under age 18 cannot be sentenced to life in prison without parole. The essence of Fairley's argument was that, although he was 21 at the time of the murders, he should have received the same consideration that juveniles under age 18 would have received in the case. Judge Carpenter appointed a public defender, a defense attorney, mind you, to review the appeal and provide his feedback on it. The public defender, Timothy Peter Weil, found that the appeal lacked any basis in law and was therefore frivolous. He then asked the judge for permission to withdraw as Fairley's attorney. This was Fairley's second appeal, the first one having been filed in 1997, and like the first appeal, this one was ultimately dismissed. Today, Caleb Ferry is inmate number DB0998 in the Fayette State Correctional Institution, where he will likely spend the rest of his life. He is one of nearly 1,900 inmates in the maximum security prison, which is located along the Monongahela River roughly midway between Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Morgantown, West Virginia. Lisa and Devon were buried together in one coffin at St. Patrick's Catholic Church Cemetery in Norristown, Pennsylvania. As alluded to earlier, residents of the local community were shocked and appalled that such horrific crimes took place in their hometown. 2,000 community members pitched in and raised $250,000 to build a playground in memory of little Devon. The Manderach Memorial Playground was dedicated on September 12, 1998. It's located within Limerick Community Park, and more than 20 years later, it still provides endless entertainment for local kids. And that's the end of today's episode. You've been listening to Great Lakes True Crime. If you like the show, please leave us a positive review on your podcast app. It really helps us out. You can follow the show on Facebook or Twitter. Just search for Great Lakes True Crime. This has been Steve, your host and producer. Thanks for listening, guys.